I think we care about things that resonate with us, that help us see the world, and more importantly, see ourselves more clearly. That is the real, true, and honest reason for why you should care about the Middle East, its people, and their stories. Welcome to Hadoota, Stories from East and West, the podcast that invites you on a captivating journey through the enchanted realms of the Middle East and the US, one story at a time. I'm Mariam Wahba, your host, and together, let's plunge right into the world where cultures converge and narratives ignite. Hello and welcome to the very first episode of Hadoota, Stories from East and West, an Americanish podcast. I'm your host, Mariam Wahba, and I'm thrilled to be embarking on this journey with you. Before anything else, I want to tell you a little bit about the name of this podcast. The word Hadoota is an Arabic word, Egyptian to be exact, and it simply means story. But growing up, it embodied a lot more than that for me. In fact, for a lot of Egyptians, a Hadoota was an experience. Many of us can easily recall memories of when our mothers and grandmothers would gather us and our siblings and our cousins around a meal or a fire to tell us a Hadoota. And we'd be enthralled with a story, an adventure we were taken on. I named this podcast Hadoota because that is exactly what I want it to be. An adventure, somewhere where we both can come to be moved by stories. That brings me to the second part of the show's name. Stories from East and West. When Adele and I first started Americanish, it was because we both felt like we were being pulled at from different directions. On one hand, we were both Americans, living, working, and experiencing life here in the US. On the other hand, we were both so much more. Adela is a Syrian, Lebanese, Mexican Jew, and I, Egyptian Coptic Christian. But more on that in a bit. In addition to feeling like we had to pick an aspect of who we are and stick to it, we also felt like the stories of our people were often untold. In my personal life, it is my goal to tell the story of my people, for it to be seen and heard. And because I'm a part of such a niche and small community, I have the honor and privilege of working with and getting to know a lot of other small and niche communities across the world, but more precisely across the Middle East. The bigger goal then becomes to tell the stories of all these people and their communities. That goal from where I stand is self-fulfilling. To be seen as a community is enough on its own, whether it's mine or somebody else's. But that is definitely not the reason you should be listening. So, why tell stories? If you're not from the Middle East, have never been there, don't have any immediate or direct connections, why should we care about the Middle East? And especially, why should you care about all these untold stories that I'm going to be telling here on Hadoota? Realistically, it's okay to be asking yourself that question. Why should I care about the Copts of Egypt, the Assyrians of Iraq, the Maronites of Lebanon, the Baha'is, the Druze, the Armenians, the Kurds, and the list goes on and on and on? I could answer your very valid question a couple different ways. I could say that these communities are all made up of people, just like you and me. And that if you want to practice empathy and compassion, you should get to know these communities. Or I could try to convince you that these communities are all really cool and come with their own set of music, culture, food. And that would be really awesome to get to know that. Or I could even guilt trip you into caring about the less fortunate in the case of many of these communities. But if I'm being honest with you and with myself, which is something I'm going to try to do over the next couple of weeks, these are not really good reasons for why you should care and why you should listen to Hadoota. We as humans don't care about things for any of those reasons. I think we care about things that resonate with us, that help us see the world, and more importantly, see ourselves more clearly. That is the real, true, and honest reason for why you should care about the Middle East, its people, and their stories. In one way or another, I believe the things that we can learn from all these communities are things that make America, our country, so beautiful, resilient, compassionate, and just pretty great all around. So every week, you and I will be diving into a story, or a Hadoota, relating to the Middle East, the United States, somewhere in the middle, or somewhere that connects those two worlds. Through storytelling, we'll bridge the gap between East and West, bringing you closer to both worlds. But more importantly, hopefully helping you see yourself and the world more clearly. With that in mind, as we go through these stories, or Hadootas, of my native lands, and as you listen to some of these stories, I challenge and welcome you to reflect. Let these stories and communities be the mirror you may need. Ask yourself, in what ways do I relate to this community? Do I see myself in the ways that the Copts are so resilient, or the Kurds build community? What is something to learn from them that I can either implement in my personal life or in my communal life? I promise you there is so much to learn. And it is because of and through these stories that we're able to build communities, nations, civilizations, and worlds. In this very first episode, it's only fitting that we talk about my people, the Coptic Christians of Egypt. If this is your first time hearing about Coptic Christians, here's the Spark Notes. Copts are the indigenous ancient Egyptians, descendants of pharaohs. Because the ancient Egyptians had ideas of a forgiving God and an afterlife, they began to convert to Christianity en masse when St. Mark the Evangelist arrived in Egypt somewhere between 40 and 60 AD. And at one point, Egypt was actually 85% Christian. The Copts have not had an easy time since then, unfortunately. They were and continue to be heavily persecuted, first by the Romans and then by the Arabs when they invaded in the 6th century. Copts now make up approximately 10% of the Egyptian population. And that translates into about 10 million Christians living in Egypt, making Copts the largest ethnic and religious minority in the Middle East. In addition, there are around 2 million Copts living abroad in the diaspora in places like the US, Australia, Canada, and all over Europe. Copts are also officially part of the Oriental Orthodox Church family. This family consists of 6 churches, and they are the Coptic Orthodox Church, of course, the Syriac Orthodox Church, the Armenian Orthodox Church, the Malankara Orthodox Church, the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, and the Eritrean Orthodox Church. Try saying that really fast. A few weeks ago, the Coptic bishop visited the Catholic bishop in Vatican City. This meeting made national and international headlines as the 2 leaders held Mass, and Pope Francis even announced that the 21 Coptic Orthodox martyrs, murdered back in 2015 by ISIS for their faith, will be inserted into the Roman martyrology of the Catholic Church. And this was seen across the world as a spiritual communion of the 2 churches. Now, to fully understand the nature of this meeting and its historical and theological significance, we have to time travel back to 451 AD, when the Roman Emperor called for an ecumenical gathering of churches, with the goal of reasserting the teachings of the other ecumenical gathering that had happened just a couple years back in 431 AD. Now, there were a couple things in dispute, but the main agenda item was the nature of Jesus Christ. Was he man? Was he divine? Is he both? Could he be both? Over 520 bishops or their representatives showed up to the city of Chalcedon, Bithynia, which is now modern-day Turkey, Istanbul. They were there for a little under a month, and they met and debated. Because there are many things on the agenda for this gathering, many decisions or canons came to be. For our purposes, we're going to focus on the item of Christ's nature, which ended up being the main focus of this gathering and many others to come. At this council, the Coptic Christians split from the Roman Catholic Church. Rome accused the Coptic Church of being Monophysite, or teaching only one nature of Christ. The Catholic Church, on the other hand, claimed that Christ had 2 natures, one divine and one man. This accusation of being Monophysite was a turning point in the history of the Coptic Church. Coptic Christians believed that Christ had one nature, that is both fully human and fully divine. This difference in theological interpretation became a thorn in the side of the relationship between the Coptic and the Roman Catholic Church. Now, there are some speculative accounts of this meeting that claim that the Coptic Church actually agreed with the Catholic Church, and rather that the disputes and the ultimate decision to split was more politically motivated. But from where I stand, there's really no clear evidence to prove this theory. In addition to facing persecution for their faith in their native Egypt, the Coptic Orthodox Church faced marginalization and persecution by other churches throughout the centuries. They were often, and still are in some circles, viewed as heretics and subjected to various forms of discrimination, including restrictions on their religious practices and confiscation of property and land. These challenges reinforced the Copts' resolve to preserve their faith and ethnic and cultural identity. The division between the Coptic and Catholic Church also had a significant impact on the Roman Catholic Church. It solidified the theological differences between the two and contributed to the development of distinct traditions, liturgies, and ecclesiastical structures. The Catholic Church continued to evolve under the influence of Western theology and its papal authority. Meanwhile, the Coptic Church maintained its own theological perspectives and hierarchical structures. The impact of the divide between the Coptic and Catholic Church cannot be understated. It shaped the identities of both churches and influenced their relationship with other Christian denominations around the world. It, of course, also impacted the social, cultural, and political dynamics of the regions where both the Roman Catholic and the Coptic Orthodox Church survived. In the modern era, there has been a growing recognition of the need for interfaith dialogue and understanding. The divide between the Coptic Orthodox Church and the Roman Catholic Church serves as a reminder of the importance of seeking common ground, fostering unity, and celebrating shared values and beliefs. This recent meeting between the Coptic bishop and the Catholic bishop in Vatican City symbolizes a significant step towards unity and healing. There has been mixed reaction online, of course, with some Catholics supporting the Pope by the move, while others criticizing the attempt to build bridges with what they believe to be heretics. On the Coptic side, the story is a bit different. In my eyes, the Coptic community has bigger problems to deal with aside from how they are viewed by the Catholic Church. But it is important to applaud the move by both church leaders. By recognizing the Coptic martyrs and celebrating a joint mass, Pope Francis and Pope Tewodros demonstrated a commitment to overcoming historical divisions, building spiritual communion, and displaying love, a core tenet of the Christian faith. At least it is for me. Because this is our first episode together, I decided to tell the story as a way to lay the foundation for the incredible tales we'll be exploring in the episodes to come. The divide between the Coptic and Catholic Church is just one example of the fascinating and complex stories from the Middle East and the West. There are a couple of takeaways from this Hadoota for me. First, the resilience of communities. The story of the Coptic Christians highlight the resilience and endurance of communities in the face of historical challenges and persecution. It showcases the strength of faith, cultural and ethnic heritage, and the ability to preserve traditions across generations and centuries. Second, it's never too late to mend fences. The meeting between the Catholic and the Coptic bishop in Vatican City symbolizes the possibility of reconciliation and healing even after a long, long history of division. It serves as a reminder that it's never too late to mend fences, to seek understanding, and to work towards unity when possible. Here, I want to emphasize the importance of forgiveness, dialogue, and the willingness to overcome past grievances. This story encourages individuals and communities, you and me alike, to strive for reconciliation, recognizing that healing and unity are possible, regardless of the length of time that had passed. Last but definitely not least, enduring communities are only better and stronger together. Now, this does not mean I am advocating for the union of churches. In my eyes, each church is an instrument in the orchestra, and they all need to play their part for the orchestra to sound good. But we are stronger and more likely to survive and endure as a united front. Recognizing and honoring the individuality of each community does not diminish the importance of unity. Instead, it emphasizes the need for mutual respect, understanding, and appreciation of one another. Just as a symphony requires the careful coordination of different instruments, our world thrives when we embrace the contributions of diverse community and value their voice and perspective. Over the next few weeks, my hope is that each and every episode will transport you to a different time and place, unraveling narratives of courage, faith, and the triumph of the human spirit. Thank you for joining me on this inaugural episode of Hadoota, Stories from East and West. I'm Mariam Wahba, your host, and I'm honored to be your guide on this journey. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we will uncover another hidden gem from the vast tapestry of the Middle East. Thank you for listening to Hadoota, Stories from East and West, an Americanish media production. To stay connected and learn more, you can follow us at Americanish Media, and you can follow me at the Mariam Wahba on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube. See you next week.